Chun lived alone at the edge of the orbital district, where Earth's atmosphere shimmered against the giant dome of steel and glass. His small unit was barely more than a single room, stacked with repair tools, ration packs, and the quiet hum of old machines he fixed for trade. For years, he had chosen solitude. After losing his unit in the frontier wars, after watching comrades vanish into smoke and silence, he decided he needed no one. The city outside had families, markets, and lights. But Chun's door stayed closed. That night, however, the silence broke. It began with a knock, faint but steady, echoing through the thin metal of his door. Chun frowned, laying down his welding torch. Few people ever came this far, past the broken service corridors and vent shafts. He pulled on his jacket, opened the door, and found 3 figures standing in the glow of the corridor lamps. The first was a woman, her skin faintly luminescent, pale silver with streaks of violet across her temples. Zarkonian. Chun had seen her kind before, tall and dignified, though this one looked anything but regal. Her clothes were worn thin, her shoulders trembling. In her arms she held a small boy, maybe 6 years old, his cheeks hollow but his eyes wide. Beside her stood another figure, a teenage girl no older than 15, with the same silver skin but sharper features. The woman bowed slightly, clutching the boy closer. Her voice was soft, but cracked. "Please, one night of shelter." "Just one?" Chun hesitated. He had learned the danger of getting involved. Zarkonians were often caught between trade guild disputes, hunted by both human gangs and alien rivals. If he let them in, trouble might follow. His instinct was to refuse, to tell them to try the refugee shelter closer to the inner dome. But then the boy coughed a dry, rattling sound that carried pain and hunger. Chun's gaze softened. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Co Yan," she answered. "This is Min Jun." "And Sarah?" She gestured to the teenage girl. Chun opened the door wider. "Come inside." The unit was warm, though cluttered. Stacks of metal parts filled the corners, and the faint smell of oil lingered in the air. Co Yan laid Min Jun on Chun's single cot, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Sarah hovered near the wall, suspicious eyes darting over the tools and ration tins. Chun poured hot water into a battered kettle, then dropped in a cube of nutrient broth. "It's not much," he said, sliding the steaming mug toward her. "But it'll help." Co Yan took it carefully, whispering thanks. Chun sat opposite them, studying her hands. They were calloused, scarred, not the hands of royalty hands that had worked, maybe fought. "You're far from Zarkon," he said at last. Her lips tightened. "War pushed us here. The guild closed its gates. We had nowhere left to go." Sarah finally spoke, her tone sharp. "We don't need charity. We can leave by morning." Chun didn't flinch at her defiance. He saw the same tone in young recruits once, those who learned to fight before they learned to rest. "I didn't ask for payment," he said simply. The girl looked away, but Chun noticed her eyes soften just a little as Min Jun sipped water and sighed in relief. Hours passed. Outside, the corridor lights dimmed into night mode, leaving only the pulse of neon far across the dome. Chun found himself listening to the boy's breathing, steadying now that warmth returned to his small body. So Yan sat against the wall, exhaustion pulling at her, though she fought to stay awake. "You can sleep," Chun said gently. She shook her head. "I'll stay alert." "Not here," he replied. "No one will bother you." Something flickered in her eyes, distrust, maybe fear, but then she nodded. She leaned back, clutching Min Jun's hand, and slowly drifted into sleep. Sarah remained awake longer, staring at Chun as though testing him, waiting for him to make a mistake. He simply leaned against the chair, arms crossed, eyes half closed, but ears tuned for any sound outside, for the first time in years. His unit was not silent dot when dawn lights returned to the dome. Seo Yeon woke with a start. Chun was already boiling more water, his movements precise, practiced. She expected him to tell them to leave, to reclaim his solitude. Instead, he set another mug down in front of her. "One night's shelter," he said quietly. That was the deal. "But you don't look ready to walk yet." Her lips parted, but no words came. And in that moment, Seo Yan understood something she hadn't in months of running. This human might not just be offering a roof for one night. This was the beginning of something more. Chun thought they would leave at sunrise. That was what most refugees did, rest for a night, then vanish back into the endless corridors of the orbital dome. Yet when morning came, Seo Yan's shoulders sagged as she tried to rise, and Min Jun coughed again, thin body shaking with the effort. Sarah braced her mother, glaring at Chun as if daring him to complain. But Chun only sighed, pulling his jacket over his broad shoulders. "You need food. Real food. Stay here. I'll bring something back." Sarah straightened. "We should come with you." He shook his head. "The markets don't take kindly to strangers. Not ones without credits. You'll draw the wrong eyes." That should have been the end of it, but Sarah crossed her arms. "If you think we'll sit here helpless, you're wrong." For a moment, Chun almost smiled. The fire in her voice reminded him of himself at 15, back when he thought stubbornness could protect the whole world. He glanced at Seo Yan, who sat silently, torn between resting and pride. Finally, Chun relented. "Fine, but stay close. Don't talk unless I tell you." The market sprawled under flickering neon banners, built between old cargo bays and rusted airlocks. Humans bargained in loud voices, while alien traders guarded crates of dried seafruit and machine parts. The smell of grease, spice, and sweat mixed in the stale air. It wasn't dangerous in daylight, but Chun knew how quickly disputes could turn violent. He bought a sack of rice paste, a bundle of dried kelp, and a small packet of vitamin tablets. Credits were scarce for him, but he didn't hesitate. Seo Yan's eyes widened when she saw the packet. "You shouldn't," she whispered. Chun ignored her. "A boy doesn't grow strong on scraps." Min Jun clutched the bundle as if it were treasure. Sarah looked around sharply, as if afraid someone would snatch it. And perhaps she was right, because trouble was already brewing. From across the market, a group of Zircon youths moved closer. They were tall, lean, their dark scales glinting under the neon. Zircons were not soldiers, not anymore, but they loved intimidation. One of them, with a jagged scar across his jaw, blocked Chun's path. "Funny sight," Zircon drawled. "A human feeding Zarkonian beggars. Didn't think your kind cared so much." Chun's voice stayed calm. "Step aside." The youth sneered. "Or what? You'll fix me with a wrench?" His friends laughed, circling wider. Sarah stiffened, hand tightening around her little brother's arm. Seo Yin drew Minjun closer, her breath shallow. Chun didn't raise his voice. He didn't even glare. He just shifted his stance, feet planted, shoulders square, gaze steady. A veteran's stance, one he hadn't needed in years. "You don't want this fight," he said evenly. For a heartbeat, silence held. The Zircon leader narrowed his eyes, as if trying to decide whether Chun was bluffing. Then he caught the stillness in Chun's expression, the kind that came from real battlefields, not alley fights. The sneer faltered. With a click of his tongue, he turned away. "Not worth it. Keep your strays, human." The group melted back into the crowd dot. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Seo Yin's gaze lingered on Chun, something unreadable in her eyes. He said nothing, simply turned and started walking again. Back in the unit, Chun boiled rice paste and dropped dried kelp into the pot. The smell filled the small room. Minjun ate eagerly, bits of broth running down his chin. Sarah tried to act unimpressed, but she finished her bowl in silence. Seo Yan ate the slowest, as if savoring every bite. When the meal was done, she looked up. You didn't have to stand against them. The Zircon don't forget insults. Chun shrugged. Doesn't matter. You're under my roof. For a moment, her silver eyes softened. Why? She whispered. Why risk yourself for us? Chun leaned back in his chair, staring at the dim ceiling light. Memories of mud, fire, and comrades gone too soon flickered in his mind. He didn't answer her directly. Instead, he said, no one should be left in the cold. Not if I can stop it. That night, when the corridor lights dimmed again, Sarah lay curled protectively near her brother. Suo Yin sat awake, watching Chun quietly from the corner. He had fallen asleep in his chair, head tipped back, arms folded. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel something like safety. But safety was fragile. She knew the Zircon youths would not forget, and somewhere deep inside, Seo Yan wondered if this man's door had opened not just for a night, but for something far more lasting. The following days settled into a rhythm Chun hadn't expected. He rose early, brewed strong tea, and boiled rice paste with kelp for breakfast. Minjun laughed more now, chasing a ball Chun patched together from scraps of rubber tubing. Sarah insisted on helping with repairs, learning how to tighten bolts and replace wires. Seo Yan stayed quiet, but her hands found work scrubbing metal plates, folding sheets, even polishing the old heater. The silence of Chun's unit had been replaced with life, and though he never said it aloud, he found the change strangely welcome. But peace never lasted long in the dome. One evening, as corridor lights dimmed, the knock came. Not gentle, like Seo Yan's first plea, but hard, deliberate. Chun opened the door to find 3 figures waiting Zircon youths, the same gang from the market. The scar-jawed leader grinned, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Human, he said mockingly. You've been busy playing family. Thought we'd come visit. Behind him, the others shifted, their scaled hands resting on stun rods. Chun didn't move from the doorway. You're not welcome here, he said calmly. Scarjaw smirked. Neither are they. His gaze flicked past Chun's shoulder, catching the faint outline of Seo Yan inside. Strays belong in the outer drains, not under your roof. Unless you're hiding them for yourself? Sarah had stepped closer, fists clenched, but Seo Yan pulled her back. Chun's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Leave now. The Zircon chuckled. You can't guard them forever. We'll collect our payments soon. With a final sneer, he tapped the doorway frame with his rod and walked off, his friends laughing as their shadows melted into the corridor. When the echoes faded, Seo Yan whispered, They'll come back. Chun shut the door firmly. Let them. They'll find me waiting. Sarah stared at him, half in awe, half in fear. Why do you stand for us? You barely know us. Chun looked at her, then at Minjun curled on the cot with wide, frightened eyes. I don't need to know you to know what's right, he said simply. That night, Chun stayed awake, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the door. Memories of war pressed close barricades, late-night patrols, the faces of men who trusted him to keep watch. Now, years later, he found himself standing guard again, but for a family that wasn't his own. The next morning, Seo Yan set a small tin on the table. Inside were 3 silver coins, scratched and worn. It's all we have, she said quietly. Take it, and we will leave before more trouble comes. Chun pushed the tin back. Keep it. She frowned. We can't stay without payment. This isn't about payment, he said, voice firm. You asked for one night of shelter. You got more because you need more. That's all. Her silver eyes searched his face, trying to read the truth there. Slowly she closed the tin. For the first time, a hint of relief flickered across her tired features. Later that day, Chun took Sarah with him to the repair bay, where he worked part-time. He showed her how to log serial numbers on a slate and mark faulty circuits with chalk. She listened closely, though her stubborn streak remained. "You treat me like an apprentice," she muttered. "You want to protect your family? Learn skills." "Not just fists," Chun replied. That evening, as the heater hummed and Minjun fell asleep against Eo Yan's arm, Sarah surprised everyone. She spoke softly, almost embarrassed. "Thank you for not turning us away." Chun didn't answer, only adjusted the heater dial and sat back in his chair. But Seo Yin's gaze lingered on him, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something more. Instead, she only whispered to Minjun, smoothing his hair as the boy dreamed dot peace held for 2 more nights. On the third, while Chun was checking the outer vents, a neighbor hurried to him. "Careful," the man muttered. "The Zircon gang's been asking around. They know you're sheltering outsiders. They've set a price." Chun nodded, no surprise in his expression. He had expected this. When he returned to the unit, Seo Yan looked up at him anxiously. "What did he say?" Chun sat down, checking the rifle's charge. "They're coming sooner than we thought." Sarah's face hardened, but Seo Yin's voice broke. "We've brought danger to your door. We should go." Chun met her eyes firmly. "No, if you leave now, they'll hunt you in the drains. Here, at least, you have walls. And me." For the first time since that midnight knock, Seo Yan's hands trembled not from fear, but from something deeper. She had begged for a single night. Now she realized this human meant to stand against the storm with them, no matter the cost. And in her heart, the question burned. How far could kindness truly carry them? The attack came sooner than Chun expected. 2 nights after the neighbor's warning, heavy boots thundered in the corridor. Minjun woke crying, clutching at Seo Yan's arm. Sarah grabbed a wrench from Chun's workbench, her eyes wide but determined. Chun calmly set his rifle across his knees and stood. "Stay behind me," he said. The door shuddered as fists hammered against it. Then came the voice, harsh and mocking. "Human! Open up. Tonight you pay for keeping strays." Chun opened the door himself. On the other side stood 6 Zircon youths, their scaled arms marked with red bands of their gang. Scarjaw grinned, holding his stun rod high. "Told you we'd come." Chun stepped into the corridor, closing the door quietly behind him. He kept his rifle lowered, but ready, his stance steady. The gang spread in a half-circle, laughter echoing down the metal walls. "You should have thrown them out," Scarjaw sneered. "Now you'll bleed with them." Chun's voice was calm, almost cold. "If you want them, you'll go through me first." The Zircons laughed again, but something in Chun's stillness unsettled them. When Scarjaw lunged, Chun moved like a soldier, fast, precise. The rifle cracked with a stun shot, dropping the first youth. He swung the butt of the weapon into another's jaw, sending him sprawling. Sarah, listening from behind the door, gasped, but Seo Yan pulled her close. "Stay inside," she whispered. Though her own hands shook. In the corridor, the fight exploded. 2 Zircons rushed Chun from the sides. He ducked, drove his shoulder into one, and slammed him against the wall. Sparks showered from a broken light as another stun rod grazed his arm. Pain burned, but Chun gritted his teeth, sweeping the attacker's legs with a soldier's precision. Scarjaw snarled, charging again. Chun met him head-on, their weapons clashing in the dim light. The Zircon was taller, younger, but Chun's movements were honed by years of war. He blocked, pivoted, struck, until the stun rod clattered to the floor. With one final shove, he pinned Scarjaw against the wall. Rifle pressed to his chest. "Enough," Chun said, his voice like iron. "This ends here." For a long moment, the corridor was filled only with heavy breathing. Then Scarjaw spat to the side, eyes narrowing. "You'll regret this, human." He shoved free and stumbled back. The others gathered their fallen and dragged them away, muttering curses. Their retreat echoed down the corridor until silence returned. Sean lowered his rifle slowly, shoulders heaving. His arm throbbed where the stun rod had struck, but he was still standing. He turned back to the door and opened it. Inside, Seo Yan stared at him with wide eyes, Minjun clinging to her side. Sarah held the wrench tightly, but her lips trembled. "They're gone," Chun said quietly. Seo Yan stepped forward, her voice breaking. You could have died. Why do this for us?" Chun set the rifle aside and sat heavily on the chair, sweat dripping down his brow. He looked at her, at all of them, and finally spoke the truth. "Because no one stood for me when I needed it most. I swore if I ever saw someone left in the cold, I'd never walk away again." The room fell silent. Then Minjun crawled into his lap, small arms wrapping around Chun's chest. "Thank you," the boy whispered. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly, pretending not to cry. Seo Yan lowered herself to the floor across from Chun, her silver gaze steady. "We asked for one night of shelter," she said softly. "You've given us more than we dreamed. You've given us a home." Chun didn't reply, but his hand rested gently on Minjun's shoulder. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was warm, alive. That night, no one slept easily, but for the first time, they felt safe together. Chun kept watch by the window, while Seo Yan leaned against the wall near him. She didn't speak, but her presence was steady, like a vow unspoken. Outside, the dome's neon lights flickered, but inside the small unit, something stronger had taken root. They were no longer strangers bound by chance. They were a family, though none of them had said the word yet. And Sean knew, deep in his heart, that this choice had sealed their lives together forever. Morning light spilled through the narrow window, catching dust motes in the air. The corridor outside was quiet again. No laughter, no taunts, just the hum of the dome's ventilation systems. Chun sat with his arm bandaged, the sting of the stun rod fading slowly. Across the room, Minjun slept deeply for the first time in weeks, small chest rising and falling in peace. Sarah dozed against the wall, wrench still clutched in her hand. And Seo Yan watched Chun, her silver eyes filled with something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. "Trust. You should rest," she said softly. Chun shook his head. "I've rested enough in my life." The boy needed safety more than I needed sleep. She moved closer, kneeling by his chair. "You stood for us when no one else did, not even our own kind." Chun looked at her steadily. "You asked for one night of shelter. That night has stretched into days. If you want to go, I won't stop you. But if you stay—" His voice trailed off, uncertain for the first time. Seo Yan's lips trembled. "If we stay, we bring danger to your door again. Are you ready for that?" Chun's reply was simple. "I've lived too long behind a closed door. Maybe it's time I opened it." For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she reached for his injured arm, her hand steady as she retied the bandage. "Then we'll stay," she whispered. When Sarah stirred awake, Chun found her watching him carefully. "You don't have to pretend," she said. "You care about us." Chun raised an eyebrow. "That's a problem?" She shook her head, a faint smile breaking through her guarded face. "It's different, but not bad." The days that followed were quieter. The Zircon gang didn't return, whether from fear or because their pride was too wounded. Chun didn't know. But life inside the small unit shifted into something new. Sarah began keeping a list of repairs on the slate, scratching careful notes in uneven letters. Chun corrected her handwriting when she let him, though she pretended to be annoyed. Min-jun shadowed him everywhere, asking questions about tools, about soldiers, about everything his young mind could grasp. Seo-yan cooked what little they had, turning dried kelp and rice into meals that tasted better than Chun ever remembered. One evening, Chun returned from the market with a small pot. Inside was a seedling green leaves pushing through damp soil. He set it on the table. Sarah frowned. "What's that for?" "Every home needs something alive," Chun said. Seo-Ye touched the leaves gently, her silver eyes shining. "It's beautiful." Min-jun clapped his hands. "We can take care of it together." Chun nodded. "Exactly." And so the plant became their ritual. Each morning, Min-jun poured water with careful hands. Sarah checked the soil, and Seo-yan whispered words in her Zirconian tongue. Chun said nothing, but he watched, the corners of his mouth softening. Weeks passed. The unit no longer felt like a bunker. It felt like a place of warmth. Chun had kept the door open more often, sometimes even propped wide to let corridor light spill inside. Neighbors walked by and nodded, some curious, some quietly approving. No one challenged him. One night, as neon glow from the outer dome flickered across the ceiling, Seo-yan spoke quietly. "When I knocked on your door, I was ready to beg for one night only. I thought it was all we could ask. I never dreamed a human would give us this." She gestured around the small room, the cot, the tools, the seedling, the warmth in Min-jun's soft breathing. "A forever home." Chun's voice was steady. "Then let it be forever." For the first time, Seo-yan smiled without hesitation. Sarah looked up from her slate, and just for a moment, let herself smile too. That night, as the hum of the dome wrapped around them, Chun leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He had opened his door to strangers and found something he hadn't known he needed. Family. And from that day forward, the unit at the edge of the orbital district was no longer silent. It was filled with laughter, arguments, and the sound of life. A single knock at midnight had changed everything.